Friday here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We're joined by Gerry Dulac, one of our great Steelers beat reporters. We're going to be talking about the Brandon Aiyuk trade and getting you ready for Friday night Steelers preseason football against the Houston Texans. It's a great episode of the North Shore Drive podcast. Let's get into it. You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter. Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here joined by Gerry Dulac, one of our great Steelers beat writers here at the Post-Gazette. And as always, you can find all of our written work at post-gazette.com. And you can find all of our North Shore Drive podcasts every Monday, Wednesday, Friday on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get not just those episodes, but all the daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers, including our daily training camp reports. And a reminder, the show is brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. Go to Mike's Beer Bar today. Experience one of over 500 different available beers, 300 of those beers from the local Pittsburgh area, and 80 of those local beers are available on tap. More on them later. Gerry, we finally get to talk about some preseason football, but we got to talk about the trade negotiations that, of course, involve Brandon Aiyuk. You've been on this case, sun up to sundown, getting reported. You had another sources report coming out, basically outlining what's going on here. What are you hearing on the ground here that the Steelers are the things that are maybe holding up any negotiations and trade talks?
Well, whatever is holding up the deal is coming from the 49ers end, Chris. And I think based on what I'm told and what I have read from the other side, but what I've been told is that the 49ers would like to get a wide receiver. If they're going to lose Brandon Aiyuk, they want to get a receiver to replace him. Now, what level of receiver, I don't know, but obviously a competent one.
Right.
They're not going to get that from the Steelers. They're not going to get any player from the Steelers. The Steelers are not parting with any player as part of this deal. And so now the 49ers, maybe now they're going to look elsewhere, or they're going to involve a third team, maybe to get a receiver. And then if they get a receiver, then maybe they will make that deal with the Steelers. But right now, the ball was in the 49ers court to see what they are going to do, to see if they want to do the deal. I think the Steelers are prepared to do the deal. They certainly would like to do the deal. Do they need to do the deal? That's another story. I don't think they need to do it. There's no question they would like to do it. And I'm not sure, Chris, this thing might not drag into next week, steal some more. But we'll see. And but I don't think there's any question if Omar Khan can execute this deal, then it's a big plus for the Steelers. There's no doubt about it. It's a big plus for their offense. And I think the other part of it too, I think people, are concerned. One, what effect does it have on George Pickens? Was he, we know he can be temperamental.
Mm-hmm.
He can fly off the handle here and there. Will this be a blow to his ego? Personally, I don't think so. They wouldn't be bringing Brandon Aiyuk in to be their number one receiver. Obviously, if they make this deal, Chris, they're going to sign Brandon Aiyuk. That's going to be part of the deal. They're going to sign him to a multi-year contract. So now the question is, okay, how much are they going to pay Brandon Aiyuk? And does that affect what they might pay George Pickens when his deal is up after 2025? I've been told it won't have any impact whatsoever on George Pickens' deal. You look at the Steelers' history, they rarely pay two big-time wide receivers. They let go of Plexico Burress when Hines Ward's contract was up. When they signed Antonio Brown, they let go of Mike Wallace and Emmanuel Sanders. So, but I've been told that it will not affect anything with George Pickens. They will then, if after 2025, barring something unforeseen, they will pay him what they feel they need to pay him as their number one receiver. So Aiyuk's deal won't have any impact on George Pickens' deal in another year.
I think that's a huge factoid there, because if the Steelers, I mean, I'm looking at the Steelers, salary cap, and right now, as it states for next year, they have the third most salary cap space in the NFL, over $78 million in space. So they have money to play with, but they also have people to sign. Pat Freiermuth isn't under contract. George Pickens would have one more year left. They don't know what's going on with the quarterback position. TJ Watt's new deal is right around the corner. So there's concerns there, but I find that's more encouraging for why the Steelers would be for this trade to happen, because if they feel like, hey, we can afford Brandon Aiyuk and George Pickens and still keep the overall nucleus of this roster intact, that is more suggestive that, hey, Omar Khan is open to this. But do you feel Omar Khan has strong leverage here with the Niners? Because it sounds like to me, like if Omar Khan's sitting there and saying, hey, I'm not jumping up for my offer, he's kind of putting the pressure on John Lynch and the 49ers, be like, hey, you have a guy that's not practicing, seems disgruntled. You might want to get rid of that. And if there's no other suitors, you got to come our way.
Well, Chris, a couple things. First of all, if the Steelers have the highest paid defense in the league, they have the lowest paid offense in the league. When you look at what they're paying their quarterbacks, so Russell Wilson, veteran minimum, Kyle Allen, same. Justin Fields, what is he, $2 or $3 million on his rookie deal? They didn't pick up, they didn't exercise his option. But both running backs on a rookie deal, their wide receivers, rookie deals. And so the only people that are really paying are Isaac Seumalo and James Daniels, and neither is breaking the bank, although Seumalo has the bigger deal. So they have not spent a lot of money on offense. That being said, Pat Freiermuth, what are they going to do with him? Najee Harris, his contract's up. Jaylen Warren, contract up. Both quarterbacks' contract is up. So they have a lot of people. Then you flip to the other side, Cam Hayward's contract is up. So, yeah, they have a lot of guys they have to deal with in terms of getting them a new contract after the year. What do they want to do with them? But when you look at this situation, does Omar Khan have the leverage here? Probably, but there's nothing to preclude the 49ers from trying to reach a deal with Brandon Aiyuk themselves, and that could circumvent everything. But if they, I think the Cleveland Browns are in the running here. They could obviously offer Amari Cooper. I believe Brandon Aiyuk has let it be known he doesn't want to sign with the Browns. That doesn't mean that won't happen. But I don't know that he has the leverage. Certainly right now, the 49ers don't have the leverage. But again, it goes back to, do the Steelers need Brandon Aiyuk, or would they just like Brandon Aiyuk? And so, it's not like George Pickens is hurt and out for the season, and then maybe the 49ers have leverage. But I think right now, at the very least, I would say the Steelers probably have the leverage in that deal.
That he's Gerry Dulac. He's got his ear to the ground here in Pittsburgh, letting us know what's going on there. I want to get Gerry's insights on offense and defense for this upcoming game, because we got some football, Gerry. I don't know if everyone forgot about that because of all this trade talk. We're going to get to that insight next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But first, got to remind you, this show is brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. When you go to Mike's Beer Bar, it's right on Federal Street, across the street from PNC Park. They have over 500 different available beers. 300 of those beers are from the local Pittsburgh area, and 80 of those local beers are available on tap every day, and they're always switching new ones in and out, so you can always try something new when you go to Mike's Beer Bar. They also have amazing food like their steak on a stone, where you get your choice cut of steak brought to you on a heated stone. All you do is cut off a piece, press it into the stone, and you choose how well done you want every single bite. It's Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. Go there today. When you get there, tell them Chris sent you. We're back here in the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Gerry Dulac, breaking down what's the upcoming preseason game. Steelers play the Texans, 7 o'clock, Acrisure Stadium. We will all be there from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette team covering this game live for you all. And, of course, we'll have post-game reactions right here on this channel, so tune in for that. Gerry, let's talk about the offense here. I want to focus first on the offensive line, and we'll get to the quarterback situation because we know Russell Wilson's not playing in this game. But on the offensive line, we have seen the Steelers start to creep in Broderick Jones to left tackle with Troy Fautanu at right. But we saw in walkthroughs on Thursday that Dan Moore still at left, while Broderick still at right is a prominent thing. How quickly do you think that change happens, if at all, in the coming months here, or the coming month here before the season starts?
Yeah, I don't see it changing, Chris. I think when they get to Atlanta for week one, what you see on the depth chart is what it's going to be on the field. And Dan Moore, there's no reason to take Dan Moore out of the starting lineup. I think Broderick Jones for now is going to stay at right tackle. This was told to me on draft night by the Steelers that, maybe the quickest path for now for Troy Fautanu to get into the starting lineup might be at guard. And I don't think they're just going to, indiscriminately replace James Daniels. But I think right now, they like Dan Moore. Now, is Dan Moore going to be re-signed? No. Is he going to go in the free agent market and get a big contract? Absolutely, from another team. And then for sure, that's what will happen. And Troy Fautanu will be their right tackle. But I think for now, and again, injuries could dictate otherwise. But I think for now, if Fautanu is going to get into the starting lineup at some point, again, I think the earliest and quickest path or easiest path for him will be at guard. Now think about it. If you have Fautanu at right guard and Broderick Jones at right tackle, and then you line Darnell Washington next to Broderick Jones. Now think of that wall. Woo! On the right side. You have Isaac Seumalo on the left side. Dan Moore is a quality left tackle. Am I going to sit here and call him a Pro Bowl tackle? No. But this guy has started at left tackle from day one of his rookie season. And I'm telling you, when he's going to be a rich man on the free agent market, the way teams covet left tackles. And there is no reason for them to replace Dan Moore other than if they just want to make that move now. And I don't see that happening at any point, Chris, barring injuries, of course.
Of course. The other young offensive lineman everyone's looking at is Zach Frazier. Herbig's been pretty steady as the first string center there. Do you think it's a similar path here where Herbig's going to kind of hold down the fort now because he doesn't have that starting experience that Moore has at left tackle? Or do you think Zach Frazier presses him and maybe gets a chance to start in one of these preseason games?
Chris, I think that's what we're going to find out in these preseason games. But if I had to guess right now, again, in Atlanta, I think Nate Herbig will be the starting center. We see Zach Frazier get a little bit better each day. But until we see him in a game, I don't know that we will see that move happen anytime soon. I'll be curious to see who becomes the starter sooner, Zach Frazier or Troy Fautanu, based on the circumstances. There's no question, when you draft a guy number one, just like last year, they were going to get Broderick Jones in the game, in the lineup, and they will get Troy Fautanu in that starting lineup at some point. It's just a question how soon, but he will be in there this year. And, of course, the other guy, and I don't mean to get ahead of you, but is Mason McCormick, and that is the guy who intrigues me the most. Will he be a starter this year, barring injury? No, but I'll tell you what, come next year, whole different ballgame. They really like this guy. He's been very impressive, played against little lesser competition in training camp. But he's a tough guy. He moves better than they thought he did. Had a chance to talk to some of the coaches a little bit ago about McCormick, and they thought he moved better than they saw on film. And they watched him in college, and they asked him about it, and he said he played with some neck brace that made him look stiffer and kind of limited his ability to move. And that's one of the things that surprised them is his mobility. I like this kid, and I think. I'll be curious to see how he develops, especially into year two.
Certainly, that was part of, I think, the hope there with Daniel's contract running out and no sign of them resigning him. If McCormick could fill in, that would be huge for the Steelers in 2025. Let's move away from the line a little bit. I want your thoughts on Justin Fields. I think we've seen him grow in training camp. He's gone from the guy that had happy feet all the time to a more consistent processor of the offense. But we all know Russell Wilson is still QB1. What do you think is the best you can hope for if you're looking for something from Justin Fields as far as showing that he's ready to step right in if anything happens to Russell Wilson?
Well, the best thing that happened to Justin Fields was the calf injury to Russell Wilson, because it's just given the Steelers, Justin Fields and the Steelers an opportunity to have a longer, more extensive evaluation. And what we've seen from Justin Fields has been very impressive, but we see the best and we see the worst of Justin Fields. And the good Justin Fields is, go routes down the sidelines. He just puts dimes out there. And when he has a one read quick slant to George Pickens, he does that. He looks good. Where he gets into trouble is if he has to drop back and maybe go through a couple checkdowns or progressions. Then we see the ball, in the ground or a little errant. And, I'm not going to forget about his ability to run. We've seen that, of course, too. So I think what happens here, Chris, I believe that Justin Fields has convinced them that at some point they have to consider, and I'm sure they will, getting him into the game in certain packages, maybe 3-4 snaps a game. Look, Russell Wilson is going to be their starter. That's the plan. That's why they brought him in. 9-time Pro Bowl guy, 1 Super Bowl, should have won 2. And they need to win now, and they need to win a playoff game now, and they feel Russell Wilson gives them their best chance. Justin Fields wouldn't be on this team if they didn't trade Kenny Pickett, but they were bringing in Russell Wilson to start ahead of Kenny Pickett. And so, but I think, Chris, if they're looking to score points and to do things differently, and why wouldn't you with a new coordinator? I know, believe me, Mike Tomlin never has believed in taking his starting quarterback out of the game, for another quarterback. But for most of his career, he's had Ben Roethlisberger. So why would he want to do that? But in this instance, I think they would be dumb to not have a couple plays for Justin Fields. As we heard Arthur Smith say the other day, Chris, he's dangerous with the football in his hands. And why would you not take advantage of that for a handful of plays in every game?
Absolutely. Gerry, give me one skill player you're watching really closely tonight, because you could go from tight end to wide receiver, but the top guys might not be out there for too long. Mike Tomlin, might not keep it up, but there's plenty of guys I think that are fighting to show, hey, I deserve more targets or more playing time in this offense.
Chris, I don't know how much this guy's going to play, but based on what I've seen in training camp, I really like him. I think he could be a solid addition, and that is Van Jefferson. But I need to see him in a game. But
Yes.
What I see in camp, I like the guy. Again, being the first game, I don't know how much he's going to play, but I think he'll play a little bit. Obviously, I would have loved to have seen Roman Wilson, but that's not going to happen, not this game. But I would say of the skill people, none of the running backs. I mean, certainly Jonathan Ward has looked good in camp. But I don't want to say I'm not intrigued, because he's not going to make the football team. There's just no room for him. But Van Jefferson will. And, I want to see what he and even Kes Watkins have to offer in a game situation, even a preseason game.
I think that's one guy that everyone, I think, might be underestimating right now, simply because of what he's been able to put up in the NFL so far. He's been impressive in camp. We'll see if he can be impressive in a game. We'll talk more about the defensive side and who we're looking at there with Gerry Dulac here in the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Still a lot to discuss. But first, remind you, this show is also brought to you by Savina's Kane & Galuccia. They are your mesothelioma and asbestos lawyers with over 85 years of experience. Call Savina's Kane & Galuccia today for a consultation. We're also brought to you by Moon Township Honda, where you can find that 5802 University Boulevard in Moon Township, Pennsylvania, or on their website, moonhonda.com. Here's our message from our friends at Moon Township Honda.
To build the Honda CR-V Hybrid, we took everything you love about the CR-V and kicked it up a notch with greater power for a CR-V unlike any before. Adventure confidently with Honda, Car and Driver's most awarded brand in 10 Best history. The CR-V and CR-V Hybrid, part of the Honda line of rugged vehicles. Visit your local Honda dealer where new vehicles are arriving daily. Buy online or reserve from select Honda dealers.
We're back here in the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Gerry Dulac. Gerry, let's talk defense here. We know certain guys aren't going to play. TJ Watt, they're going to sit guys out. But I do think that there's still a lot of new pieces to this team that'll be really intriguing to see, especially when it comes to some of those playmakers they brought in. Patrick Queen, will be interesting. Dante Jackson will be interesting. What do you expect out of the linebackers as far as how aggressive they'll be allowed to be in this defensive game? Because we know a lot of preseason games, there's a lot of shells, a lot of basics, a lot of vanilla stuff that they throw out here.
Yeah, I think, to me, I'm not sure there's any question. Again, quarterback's always the most important position on the team, and we'll see what Russell Wilson can bring. But I think the addition of Patrick Queen to that defense was just a big-time move by the Steelers. Mike Tomlin said the other day he's not going to play, against the Texans, and I didn't expect that he would. But I think what's intriguing now is when you look at last season when they had three guys, Cole Holcomb, Quan Alexander, and Landon Roberts, they were rotating those guys against specific teams in specific situations. But then back-to-back games, both those guys go out for the season, and Landon Roberts is the lone guy standing. And to me, Landon Roberts was the heartbeat of that defense last year. What that guy did, when they were trying to bring in the Michael Walkers and Blake Martinez, they had to talk Miles Jack off his couch and try to put 10 pounds on him to play again. And yet there was a Landon Roberts tearing his pectoral muscle, coming back a week later when he had no business playing and playing 50% of the snaps. That guy is all heart, and he's earned a big-time spot on this defense. And so you pair those two, knock on wood that they can stay healthy. Landon Roberts is a thumper. But there's no question, to me, possibly the most exciting pick in the draft might be Payton Wilson. And when you get a 242-pound guy who can run 4.43 and who is aggressive, that's the kind of guy that you think eventually is going to be a starter. Now, he won't be on this defense because they're not going to take Landon Roberts out of the game. Right. But in sub-package situations, depending on how much he knows and has retained and how much he's comfortable with, I think he's a guy you want to see on the football field. He's a guy you want to evaluate and see what he has and how much he can develop. So he's a very intriguing guy to watch. And then you mentioned, the trade, the Deontay Johnson trade to get Dante Jackson. It gives them a starting corner. They didn't have a real starting corner last year opposite Joey Porter. And I like Deshaun Elliott. The guy's a thumper. He's a perfect, strong safety. We've seen him make some plays in training camp. I like that pickup as well. That's why I think they've upgraded their defense, with the exception to me, Chris, of their defensive line, which to me is the same unit they had last year, except they're counting on Cam Hayward bouncing back and being healthy again at age 35. That's it. You can keep your fingers crossed with that. And, of course, Keeanu Benton. They are expecting a big-time jump. That guy was a stud last year. They really like him. And if he can be a dominant force there, and I think a big key has been DeMarvin Leal, too, showing in camp that last year, he's ready to come back from that disappointing season last season.
Gerry, I agree with you. I think the dark horse of this defense could be the young defensive linemen. If Benton and Leal do step up, I mean, Benton I thought was good last year, but if he's talked about how I need to finish more, he trained to have better endurance so he didn't tire out as much in games. And DeMarvin Leal lost weight. He's back to being quicker. If those two guys can become assets and playmakers at the line of scrimmage, it re-energizes that defensive front and combines it with, we already know the edge rushers. They're set to go. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, and they brought back Marcus Golden. The excitement for the linebacker group, the corners that you just talked about, and of course the safeties with Deshaun Elliott pairing with Minkah Fitzpatrick. Though Minkah Fitzpatrick won't be in this game. That could be the thing that keeps this defense all together and makes them one of the better defenses. What do you think is the ceiling for Benton? Do you think he can be a premier pass rusher in the middle, or do you look at him more of a, hey, he's going to be the guy to make sure no one runs up the middle gaps?
Yeah, no, I think he has a little Javon Hargrave in him. I've talked to Isaac Ciamalo about this, and he talks about his pass rush ability. He says he's very underrated. He said he's very slippery for a big guy. He can move, and he can. I like Keeanu Benton. I'm not going to sit here and say he's a 6 or 7 or 8 sack guy, but I think he could be effective, especially when they use him in sub packages at one of the 2 down linemen. And so the problem I have with the defensive line is while they made changes just about everywhere else to upgrade, they did nothing on the defensive line. They drafted Logan Lee, a guy I kind of like in the 6th round. That's for depth. And Dean Lowry, we haven't seen him yet. Comes to camp. He's on the PUP list. That addition was for depth as well. So, Larry Ogunjobi is being paid a lot of money for a guy that they keep their fingers crossed because of injuries. And they're hoping Cam bounces back. So I don't want to say they're putting a lot of faith in the defensive line just improving, but they didn't take many steps at all, if any, to make that defensive line any better. And it's something, Chris, what they've done the last 2 years with the offensive line in the draft is what they need the next 2 years with the defensive line in the draft.
Absolutely. He's Gerry Dulac. I'm Chris Carter. We will be there at Acrisure Stadium tonight for Steelers Texans, along with Brian Batko, Ray Fittipaldo, Jason Mackey. Our whole team's going to be there. It's going to be an exciting time. Get all that coverage at post-gazette.com and here on YouTube and on your favorite podcasting app. All that coverage will be there. We'll see you tonight from Acrisure Stadium. We're breaking down post-game reactions to Steelers Texans. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.